Alright, so before we begin this video, fair warning, this is going to be a more political video. Um, and also, before we get into this video, I highly recommend that you go ahead and listen to a song by an artist named Tom MacDonald. That's M-A-C, not M-C, Donald. By the title of The System. I've tried. And if I even tried to incorporate even just a little of what he put in his songs and deliver it in a way that ties all of these topics together in detail, it would take like 30 minutes. So I highly suggest that you stop and listen to that song before going on, because I'm not going to try to tie these in detail. I'm going to leave you to more or less try to tie them together yourselves, or not to. And if you have any questions about it, you can go ahead and ask, send comments and whatnot on the subject. But in any case, in this video, we're going to be talking about, basically, there are two stages in this video. One, we're going to be talking about how idealism and negative reinforcement, PC culture, and liberalism are basically all the same thing. Conservatism as well. Don't feel like I'm bashing on liberals or anything like that. I'm not. The important thing to keep in mind in all this video, throughout all this video, is a concept called Helter Skelter, and a lot of people have heard that, but a lot of people don't know what it really means. It is a term that was invented by Charles Manson, who wanted to attack a whole bunch of wealthy white people's houses and make it look like black people did it, in order to cause white people to rise up against the blacks. And by having the white people rise up against the blacks would have retaliated, and then the white people would have resorted to military, paramilitary means of basically wiping out those black people who had rose up. And that is what Helter Skelter really means. It means to perpetrate an event that antagonizes one side into attacking another side, so that that side will attack back and be annihilated, rather than approaching the problem more directly. Why would anyone do this? Well, because it's a lot harder for most people to be able to follow that train of thought, let alone identify that it's happening. And even fewer people are able to leave the indoctrination program long enough to figure out that it is indeed happening, and that it's not happening. Because that's what we're going to be programmed to look one direction while we're being played in the other direction, and that's a lot of what he's talking about in that song. That's a lot of what I'll be talking about in this video. Idealism. If you think that people are good, then when people treat you bad, you have basically three options, and that is to believe that people are bad, that those people are bad and that you're good, that you are bad in order to preserve that they are good, or that you are something other than people, or that they are something other than people. And none of these, actually, that's four, none of these are good choices. All of them are extremely destructive and cause us to turn on ourselves and others. You have things like negative reinforcement, where in order to preserve the idea that people are good, maybe you were not treated badly, but maybe you know someone who is being treated badly by people. Well, in order for you to preserve that people are in fact good, you surround yourself with like people. And there's a principle in psychology that the more often we hear something, the more we think it's true, whether or not it actually is. And so if you surround yourself with enough people and you say to yourself and you hear them say to you that it is that people are good, then you're going to believe that people are good, and that person then becomes bad. And that's how it causes us to turn on not only ourselves, but on others as well. And that person was supposed to be your friend. They were supposed to be someone you knew, and that you were close enough to, that you knew that they were having a hard time with this, and or trusted you enough to let you know that they were having trouble with this, you sort of betrayed that. And one of the problems with this negative reinforcement is that it keeps us from being able to evolve as people. It keeps us from being able to explore our identities and reinforce those identities. And it keeps us from being able to unify. The purpose of negative reinforcement is to turn ourselves on ourselves and each other, and basically divide us. And PC culture is a great example of that, where you may have something like an anti-bullying campaign that targets a specific group of people, like, oh, these people are bad, but those people may not actually be bad. This real life example from Planet Fitness, there are some comments on the wall that they made that basically discriminated extensively against people like me who worked out really, really, really hard. And the reason why I worked out really, really hard was because I was dealing with bipolar disorder, I was dealing with borderline personality disorder, I was dealing with PTSD, and only way I could compensate for a lot of that was to train hard. And so in their attempt to create a safe space for people who didn't exercise as extensively, they created a prejudicial environment against people like me, and it's part of the reason why I will never ever support Planet Fitness, even though it would be a valuable tool for me as a van lifer to have access to a gym that was national. But I mean, that's PC culture for you. Is, like I said, it turns us on each other. Liberalism is basically a condition that is formed most of the times by experiencing a lot of trauma and separation as we grew up, and as a result, or a lot of neglect, and as a result, we have identified with smaller groups versus the larger majority, and we sort of latch onto those groups, and if you don't support those groups, then you don't support us. And it's generally, like I said, it's trauma based. So if you're not with us, then you're against us a lot of the time. is how it applies. Now, I'm not a I identify as a liberal, but I'm an anti-liberal, and I'm not going to go into that extensively. But point is, I tell people I think that liberals are very good leaders as it pertains to things like AA or whatever, small groups. Small local groups, but when it comes time to be a leader of a larger area, a city, a state, a country, I think that liberals fall way short in that they fail to acknowledge the worth of the majority and the psychology of the majority and how to lead them, how to look out for their interests, and as such, they end up not doing well. Another problem with liberals is they tend to say, well, I identify with these small groups, and you identify with those small groups, but you don't identify with my small groups, so we're enemies. Like I said, that may work if you are isolating yourself to a small section of society, but if you are trying to address a much larger group in society, that is very destructive. Conservatism generally favors that majority, but that majority is majority because they are indoctrinated into that system that causes us to turn on ourselves and turn on each other in order to keep special interest groups in power. And this has been around for pretty much forever. I tell people part of the reason why Native American culture had to be annihilated the way that it did was because colonial culture onward is directly in support of that type of a system occurring. Whenever you have a few people in a considerable position of power over a large group of people, and their welfare is not directly entangled, it's not directly intertwined with those beneath them, you foster these sort of secret societies. Some people will talk about the Illuminati or other things like that, stonecutters. There's a bunch of different terms, the they and the them, but the fact is that probably even as far back as the foundation of this country, even before the foundation of this country here in the United States, that those groups have existed and have existed for a very long time. Tribal communities work almost in opposition of that, in that every individual within that tribe has a function, has a purpose, has a use. Every unique attribute that they bring to the table is appreciated in some way or another because it adds to the knowledge, the collective wisdom. It adds to the survivability of the entire group, and as a result, not everyone is expected to walk necessarily the same path. Now, if those tribal communities ever become colonialized, then that flies right out the window. So when I'm talking about tribal, I'm not talking about like modern tribal. I'm talking about old tribal. You may only have like 20-30 people per group kind of thing. Realistically, there's no reason to expect everyone to live the same, because there aren't even enough resources to even entertain the notion that everyone's going to live the same, and everyone is in view of that, and there's no denying that. So, like I said, in many ways, it causes that sort of divorce from the realization of what those groups that you can't see what they are or are not doing. It keeps that divorce from being possible. So that's part of the reason why the Native Americans had to be wiped out the way that they did, is because it directly threatened their society, their culture directly threatened the culture of the colonials who formed the country, whom most of us would call our ancestors, our forefathers, or the founding fathers. So basically, the conservative system is a system of people who are indoctrinated into the negative reinforcement of these special interest groups, trying to incite division in order to essentially play each side against one another in a way in which they are able to win. Marilyn Manson wanted the blacks to be eliminated, and so to turn the whites against the blacks by means of Helter Skelter actually worked in his favor. Now, why are we talking about all this? Well, as stated, if these ideologies, if these cultural deviations and political associations and whatnot, if these are all causing us to turn on ourselves and each other, then they are directly contributing to dissociative identity disorders and dissociative personality disorders and dissociative developmental disorders, because they keep us from being able to get to know ourselves and learning how to reinforce ourselves and how to reinforce others as individuals, rather than trying to indoctrinate them into our own way of thinking, especially if that own way of thinking that we have is based off of somebody else's thinking and not off of our own, and we just don't realize that at the time. So, the point is, there are a lot of things out there right now that seem like they're really good goals, that they're good motives, that they serve a good cause, and they really don't. And they're directly contributing to the reasons why we think man is so bad, why we don't want to have anything to do with each other anymore, why we hate our lives, why we jump from one thing to another, but we can't slow down, we can't get to know one another. We have to assume we know each other or try to impress one another, and basically convince them that we are what they've been programmed to think that they need or that they want, even if it's not good for either one of us. And yeah, this needs to end. And it makes recovery from any of these disorders really, really, really hard, as well as many other disorders. Because if you can't acknowledge yourself and where you come from and what's best for you, what are the odds that you're going to be able to discover the proper means of recovery. Anyway, that's it for this video. I've got another video coming up. I wanted to go ahead and talk about, or another 2 videos coming up. I want to talk about a realization that I made about DDD recovery, and it's a very positive one. And then there's another video that I plan on going ahead and making in the future, where I talk about the differentiations between DPD and DDD, and I also want to talk about some of the differences between DID and DPD, and for some of this I'm going to have to go back to a previous video and separate some of the criteria by which I defined DDD into those 2 different categories, because they really do deserve to be separated. But in any case, I'll get into that video at a later date. That's it for this video. Go ahead and leave some comments if you're interested in discussing any of this further, if you have an opinion to share, and I will see you in the next video.